Hey everyone, this video I will cover the in-depth details that will provide you the upper hand with your Mona Vaporize combo. So Mona's standard Vaporize burst combos revolve around a strong understanding of ICDs, elemental units, and gorge theories. But now with stagger resistant Vaporize combo, this adds another layer of theory and technicalities to the combo itself. In my previous video, I showcased various combos or tricks with Mona and Kazuha. In this video, I'm going to cover the in-depth details of the essential knowledge with elemental units, gorge theory, and internal cooldowns. Difference between a standard Vaporize burst combo and a stagger resistant Vaporize combo. How to get started with learning and practicing the stagger resistant Vaporize combo. I just want to point out that you don't need Zhongli, Albedo, or Kazuha for this, but I will be using them as examples in some of my gameplay footage. So buckle in, as it's going to be a long ride. So let's talk about elemental units and gorges first. So an elemental source, which is known as an element imbued attack or skill that will apply an element onto an enemy. Depending on an enemy's elemental status, the elemental source will act as either an aura or a trigger. All elemental sources have corresponding gorge units values, which the KeqingMains have measured it in units. They are in 1U, 2U, and 4U.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
These U's are indicated as units. So let's use Mona as an example. Mona's first normal attack applies a Hydro Aura onto an enemy. This attack would have 1 unit of Hydro. If we were to use a 1 unit Pyro attack from Klee, it will speed up the decay rate. But since we are essentially doing reverse Vaporize, which is also known as a weak element trigger, so Klee has 1 unit of Pyro in her normal attack, which would mean that she would need to follow up with another Pyro attack to completely remove a 1 unit Hydro Aura from an enemy. With weaker elemental reactions, the 1 unit from Klee's Pyro attack becomes 0.625 multiplier instead, which would take away 1 unit minus 0.625 from the existing Hydro Aura. This leaves 0.375 of the Hydro Aura remaining. To completely remove it, we would need to follow up with another Pyro attack, resulting in 2 Vaporize hits, 0.625 plus 0.625 to completely remove 1 unit of Hydro Aura from an enemy. If we did this in reverse, where the Pyro Aura is applied first with 1 unit, Hydro being the stronger amplification element, the unit modifier is changed to 2.5 times instead. This means when we apply 1 Pyro Aura with Klee's normal attack, which is 1 unit value, 1 normal attack from Mona's, which will result in a 2.5 times consumption. If we were to use Klee's bombs, which has a value of 2 units of Pyro, but then even with 1 normal attack from Mona, which is a value of 1 unit of Hydro, it would still result in 2.5 times, reaching 0 on the Pyro Gorge and completely removing both elements and triggering Vaporize. So let's take this understanding and put it into practice. With Anemo and Geo characters, their swirl and crystallized triggers will have a 0.625 multiplier. This means if I were to apply 1 unit of Hydro with Mona's normal attack, I would essentially need to swirl twice to completely remove it. 0.625 plus 0.625, which is 1.25, which would result in 0 for the Hydro Gorge. Kazuha's E has 1 unit and his E hold has 2 units, while Sucrose's elemental skill has 1 unit. This would mean Kazuha could use his E hold to fully remove 1 unit of Hydro Aura from an enemy. However, his plunge will reapply the aura. However, Kazuha's slash on his elemental burst, the initial slash itself has 2 units of Anemo. This essentially means it's 2 times 0.625, which is 1.25. One hit from his skill will instantly remove 1 unit of Hydro Aura from an enemy. With the Viridescent set, this will provide additionally a Hydro Swirl Shred. If Kazuha has Pyro Aura self-inflicted onto him through Bennett's Burst, this will result in a Hydro Shred Swirl through his initial Kazuha slash hit, and swirl DOT damage will Pyro. Sucrose would require 2 elemental swirls with her elemental skill to remove 1 Hydro application entirely. So here is a fun fact about Hydro Swirls specifically, in that it only causes the swirled enemy to be damaged in a single target, while spreading wet to nearby enemies as it doesn't do AoE damage. It is also possible to keep the Hydro Aura on enemies by continuously swirling the element over and over again. Though swirling the same enemy repeatedly, which is a single target, will cause the Elemental Gorge to expire. Zhongli's Pillar, when it resonates, it would take at least 2 hits to completely remove 1 unit of Hydro application from an enemy, basically crystallizing twice, similar to Swirl. So Mona's Elemental Burst has 2 separate ICDs and 2 separate Gorge units. I will get into explaining ICDs soon. So one being the bubble applied onto an enemy, which is 1 unit of Hydro. The bubble pop, which is 2 units of Hydro. This is why in my video I either use Kazuha's slash, that is 2 units of Anemo, to completely remove the first Hydro auras from enemies, or I double swirl or use Zhongli's Pillar to proc crystallize twice. Not removing the first 1 unit of Hydro in time will result in the bubble timing out and popping, doing only Hydro damage. This is why when we do the standard Vaporize method, where we apply Pyro first and then Mona's Burst, we are essentially knocking out the first 1 unit of Hydro application, which then is followed by an ICD, also known as the 2 to 3 second wait. Then when we finish off by adding the Pyro back onto the enemy, which the bubble pop will be prioritized as the main trigger, resulting in the vaporized damage. If you want to know more in depth about Elemental Gorge unit theory, check out AoShenCraft videos, which provides very clear and straightforward guides. Link is in the description. Now, let's cover ICDs. They are known as internal cooldowns. This information is provided by the KeqingMains. These are known as hidden timers, which occur when an elemental source applies either an elemental aura or a trigger to an enemy. During this cooldown, the elemental source cannot apply any further instance of elemental aura or trigger. During an ICD, repeated use of a specific elemental source will apply elemental damage but will not apply an aura or trigger. Let's take Mona's normal attack as an example. Based on the KeqingMains database, Mona's first and 4th hit in her normal attack chain will trigger a reaction on a single enemy. With her elemental skill, her ICDs are her first hit, the 4th hit, and the 5th hit. However, ICDs are not shared across enemies, so if an enemy were to die to Mona's first normal attack hit, then Mona follows a second attack cycle which will be directed to another enemy. This will apply Hydro Aura. So why is this important? Remember that Mona's Elemental Burst has 2 separate ICDs in one burst. The bubble applied 1 unit of Hydro and the bubble pop, which is 2 units of Hydro. This is the main reason why we need to essentially wait the 2 to 3 seconds when following the standard Vaporize method. If you want to know more about ICDs, I would suggest checking out TenTen's video guide. Now with the theory out of the way, let's get to the fun part of understanding the fundamentals with the standard Vaporize combo before we move on to the stagger resistant Vaporize combo. The standard Vaporize combo, just a brief summary of it. With the information and knowledge I have provided, we can put this into practice. This combo is also known as the Nuke Mona, or the perfect Vaporize combo. We will use Mona, Sucrose, Bennett, and a flex slot. Mona applies 1 unit of Hydro with her normal attack 1. Sucrose will Hydro-infused Swirl. Bennett will place down his Elemental Burst, providing 2 units of Pyro. Mona will use her Elemental Burst, which is 1 unit of Hydro. Being the stronger elemental reaction, this will result in a 2.5 times unit modifier, removing the Pyro aura. Mona's Burst has an ICD, which we wait for 2 to 3 seconds. We apply Pyro onto the enemy, and it will calculate the Vaporize damage. This is only a standard example. There are multiple variations of the Mona Vaporize comp. This is a standard method we usually do because a lot of characters' attacks can pop Mona's bubble, resulting in a premature pop, which will provide you with only Hydro damage. However, some characters like Klee's Elemental Burst and Zhongli's Pillar Resonance can bypass this and hit Mona's bubble without popping it. This is now where it starts to fall into interruption resistance or poise or stagger damage. So, high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. We are essentially abusing the high stagger resistance enemies with the Mona Vaporize burst combo. There are many enemies in this game that possesses forms of poise or stagger resistance within their threshold and within their animation cycles. Not all enemies will have this, but some will have animations that possess high stagger or poise resistance for a set duration, meaning that you cannot stagger them during this animation. Essentially, a lot of characters possess some form of poise or stagger values within their attacks and force level. In Mona's case, this is somewhat irrelevant, as Mona's high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. We are not aiming to stagger enemies or bring enemies' poise threshold lower. We are mainly looking for small time windows in an enemy's animation that has a complete immunity to poise or stagger attacks. Just want to bring this up. Klee's burst has a very low poise or stagger value at 25, which doesn't pop Mona's bubble. This allows Klee to use her burst to hit any enemy to remove the first 1 unit of Hydro from Mona's bubble, which then reapplies Pyro again to complete the Mona Vaporize combo. The same thing with Zhongli's Pillar Resonance, where it has a poise damage of 0, which is why it is very useful to have, where it doesn't pop Mona's bubble. So enemies that possess high stagger or poise resistance in their attack animation cycle, the fact that Mona's bubble popping on any type of attack does not become an issue, since during this small window you have an opportunity to take advantage of it. Depending on how the enemy initiates the high stagger or poise resistant animation, you could either start with Mona's or Bennett's burst. If we start with Mona's burst, we would need to follow with a swirl, because Mona's first Hydro ICD consists of 1 unit, and we would need to double swirl the target, or 1 swirl and 1 crystallize from Zhongli's pillar to remove 1 unit of Hydro completely. We can then follow up with applying Pyro onto the enemy to complete the rotation. You can either apply Pyro or use a Pyro infused swirl to secure the Vaporize damage, or a Pyro character to sustain the Pyro on the enemies. The enemies will exit out of their high stagger resistant animation and go into an idle animation state, which will result in either the bubble popping on the next impact of Pyro attack, or it will just time out. So you might be familiar with the Sunfire Gene. Before Kazuha, this was one of my favorite stagger resistant Vaporize teams. Gene's Elemental Burst applies Anemo on the field character. If that character has an elemental aura on them, this will cause a swirl of that element. An example is where Bennett's Elemental Burst is used to apply consistent Pyro aura to the character, and Gene's Elemental Burst then applies the Anemo, which swirls Pyro onto enemies. How to get started. So if you had listened in, in the very beginning, and now you have an understanding of elemental units and gorges and ICDs, and to using this knowledge we can incorporate this to use it on high stagger resistant enemies. So let's use the Stonehide Loratrol. This is a perfect subject to test out your high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. As soon as he provides himself with a Geo Shield, he becomes literally 100% stagger resistant throughout the whole time the power up shield is present. This makes him the perfect test subject for testing high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. The bubble will never pop on any character's attack, it will just time out. I will start with Mona's Elemental Burst. This will apply 1 unit of Hydro. Swap into an Anemo character and swirl away the 1 unit of Hydro. This will provide me with Hydro Shred. Now let's apply Pyro and wait. The bubble will time out, resulting in Vaporize damage. This is the most basic way to trigger Vaporize for Mona on a high stagger resistant enemy. Remember, it's not about putting down Bennett's burst first, because you don't need to do that with a high stagger resistant enemy. I would suggest practicing on the Stonehide Loratrol first to get comfortable with it and using this method to understand how the elements are being applied. Once you nail the Vaporize combo, then I would suggest to try out the Magu or floor 12 to 1 with the 2 Geofish Ops. These are very easy targets in the beginning of their startup animation. For example, the Magu take about 5 to 7 seconds to stand up. This 5 to 7 second is an immunity window which you can practice your combo on. As soon as he gets up, the immunity window will end and he will go into an idle animation state, which will result in proccing the Vaporize hit. Floor 12 to 1 has 2 Geofish Ops. If you stand in the center of the circle, they will do their jump animation. In this state, they are completely immune to stagger or poise damage. Once the animation ends, they will stand idle. This is where Mona's bubble can pop through a character's attack. There is a small chance that these enemies can chain their stagger resistant attack animations. For example, the Geofish Op can perform their jump animation, then followed by the rolling around on the ground animation. This basically extends the stagger resistant window. If you saw my 1.3 Mona video, I purposely chained 2 high stagger resistant attack animation cycles together to extend my rotation window, that being when the Magu gets up, the standing up animation, and the mask casting animation. Myuwi from the KeqingMains Discord recently added all these enemies that would have high stagger resistant animations into a spreadsheet. This also includes enemies with elemental shields, where some enemies have stagger immunity with their elemental shields, like the Stonehide Loratrol. This Excel spreadsheet is accessible through our Theorycrafting channel on the KeqingMains Discord. It is still in development, but this provides you a general listing of which enemies possess stagger resistance in their animation cycles. Let's use the Abyss Herald, where I have executed a high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. During the animation, you cannot stagger him. Not being able to stagger him means that Mona's bubble won't pop for that small animation window. Once the Abyss Herald returns into an idle state, resulting in him being open to taking poise or stagger damage, which would result in Mona's bubble popping. With this data, it has really helped me to understand all the existing stagger resistant windows for multiple enemies. This provides a lot of opportunities for Mona. Congratulations on making it through to the end of this video. You are now a certified Mona Vaporize main. Now you can spread the news and the knowledge to your fellow friends and families. I tried to provide all the relevant details needed to understand the multiple theories I had to incorporate into the high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. The teams are not necessarily restricted by the characters I used in this video. There are a lot of characters that serve different purposes and can also help Mona perform the high stagger resistant Vaporize combo. I didn't want to cover this much depth in detail because I knew that it would take a lot of time to put together the multiple theories and mechanics explanation into one video. But here it is, and hopefully you have learnt and understood the difference between the standard method and the high stagger resistant Vaporize method.